Hi everybody, I'm really excited about today's tutorial because this is a cool one. In this tutorial we're going to build a character like this with full animation and rigging and everything. And to do that we're going to learn how to export a character from Blender and then load it in React 3 Fiber. And that workflow is going to be super useful for all types of projects, not just character animation, but anything you can build in Blender, you'll be able to import into a web browser. And that's awesome. So let's get started. This tutorial is not going to teach you how to model a character like this or animate it. That would take way too long. That would make this a 20-hour tutorial. So what we're going to do is use a really cool tool from Adobe called Mixamo. And Mixamo is great for getting some free characters and some free animation. Once you log into Mixamo, you might have to create an Adobe account. You'll see a whole bunch of options for different animations and then also characters like this. So if we're going to do a character, you could actually use any of these and follow along, but I'm going to use the same one that I just showed you, and that's this character here, Michelle. So I will click use this character and we'll get a T-post version of that character with no animations being applied. And then you can go to the animations tab up here at the top and then find an animation that you want to apply to the character. If you see a little number here in the bottom left hand corner, that means it's a whole set of different animations. I'm going to use this set here because it has some cool like fighting game moves in it. And there's a lot of them. You'll notice there's also one for like an archer and one for sword and shield. And those are all packs that come with a bunch of different animations. That's really cool because you can actually apply them to your character and switch between them. And you could build a whole game character that way. In this tutorial, we're only going to use one animation for now. But yeah, so cool. Once you've selected a character and selected an animation pack, the character over here in the viewport is going to start doing all kinds of wacky stuff. We're ready to download this pack now. So select download, make sure that the format you have selected is FBX. And for the pose, you can just leave that on T-pose. And then these options are fine too, 30 frames per second, and leave this as none. Once you have those settings, hit download. It'll take a second and zip up all of the different animation files and the model, getting them ready for us. So what we're doing here with Mixamo is actually optional too. If you knew how to model and animate a character, you could skip this part and just follow along later when we get to the export part and just build your scene from scratch in Blender. The important thing is that we get some objects in Blender that we can export out. All right, so once your file's ready, you can save it anywhere you want. I'll save this to my downloads folder here. And then go and extract that. Let me see if I can find this guy. Okay, here you go. So I think I already probably extracted it. So here's the folder that you'll get when you extract that file. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of objects in here, but only one of them is your actual geometry. The rest are all animations. So one way to tell the difference is just look at the file size, and one of the file sizes will be significantly larger than all the other ones. this is actually the base model with the T-pose applied to it. Great. So once you've found the file, you'll need to open Blender. And if you don't already have Blender, it's free. It's an amazing 3D software. It's like almost as good as the really expensive ones at this point. It just keeps getting better and better. And the newest version right now is 2.9, which is great. So just go ahead and download that. And then once you have it installed, you'll be able to open it and continue following along. So once you've got Blender running, you'll get a welcome screen like this with the option to create a new file. Let's do that. We'll create a new file with the general setting here, and that'll just give us a nice scene with a few starter objects like a cube and a camera and a light, which we need none of. So we can delete all that by right-clicking on the collection here and then select delete hierarchy. That will clear out everything under that collection and leave us with an empty scene that we can use to import our character into. So to import our character from Mixamo, you just need to go to File, then Import, then FBX, then navigate to the location where you extracted your character. So mine is here. And then find that larger file, which is going to be the one with the character model and geometry in it. If you're using the same character as me, it's called CHO3_non-PBR for some reason. And go ahead and select that. But before you import it, check and make sure that under armature you have this setting checked. And it's this one, automatic bone orientation. If you don't have that one checked, some things don't work quite right. So make sure you check that. And then now you're ready to import. And if everything went according to plan, you should see your character here with a T-pose. And if you want to see the colors and the texture, you can change your viewport options in Blender using these little icons in the top right corner. I like this one. That's the second from the right. This one is kind of like a preview shading. The other one is more realistic, but it will look pretty bad right now because we don't have any lights in our scene. This one is actually more like the actual render look, but I would recommend using material preview mode. And once you have that all ready to go, the only thing left for us to do is to import the animation that we want to use. You could actually stop right now if you just wanted to export your T-pose character, but that's no fun. So let's go and import one more file. Select FBX again. And this time, instead of the big file, we can select one of these animation files that we got from Mixamo. So you could use any of these, but I'm going to use the one I used before called Armada. And that's like a cool roundhouse kick animation that is pretty sweet. So I'm going to select that. Under armature, I'm going to make sure automatic bone orientation is still checked and then import FBX. As soon as you do that, you're going to see an armature appear in the scene. And if I hit play, it's going to do the animation, but it's not attached to the model. So that's our final step, is to take this animation and apply it to the actual model. And in order to do that, I would start by opening up the new armature, the one we just imported, and expanding its animation node and then changing the name of the animation. The animation is this little keyframe symbol thing here, and we can just call that kick. This will just make it easier for us to find when we're attaching it to the character. All right, so once we've done that, now go back and select your character and switch over to animation mode, or the animation workspace is what it's called in Blender. And that will just give us some windows that are pre-configured for an animation workflow. The only one that we need to be concerned with is the bottom one, which is called the dope sheet. This is where you control the animations. So if you look at the dope sheet right now, you'll see that currently we have this thing called armature mixamo.com layer 0 applied. That's the default animation or the T-pose, and so it doesn't do anything. There's just like one keyframe there or two, but you know, they're both the same. So what we need to do is switch this animation out with the kick animation that we imported. And to do that, you switch from the dope sheet to the action editor. And the action editor has this new tab here at the top, which shows you all the different animations that are in the scene, and you can change them out. So if you want to apply the kick animation, click on this little drop down and then switch to kick. You should see this model immediately respond to that. If it doesn't, there might be something wrong. You might have to go and try again. Make sure you have the checkbox checked that we had in the import. But if it works, you should see something like this, and you should be able to go back to the dope sheet. And now you'll see that the animation applied is kick. And if I do a drag of the timeline, bam, there's our kick. Cool. So one last thing before we export this. We, now that we've hooked up the animation to the model, we can get rid of that second armature that we imported. We actually don't need it. So you can right click on it, make sure it is the second one and not the original one. If you select the wrong one, it will delete your character. So, you know, just make sure it's the second one and then delete it. You should still have the same behavior for your character. Great. So now that we have removed that, it means we have one object that we want to export, and that's perfect, because if you have more than one, it just leads to some weird problems in the next step. So now we're ready to export. So you can go to the same places where you imported, but instead of import, you export, and then instead of FBX, select GLTF. GLTF is the preferred file format for exporting to Three.js or React 3 Fiber and pretty much any other WebGL based tool. So select that and then pick out a name that you can remember for your export file. I'm going to use kick, and you can leave all of these settings as the default. So just give it a name and hit export. Now, once it's exported, that's great. We have the GLB file that we're going to need, but we want to do one more step and use this amazing tool created by the creator of React 3 Fiber called GLTFJSX. This tool will automatically create a React component for us that loads and wraps the GLB file to make it easier to use. And using it's pretty easy. All you need to do is have Node installed on your computer. So you'll need to get Node. If you don't know how to do that, check out the video I made about it, or just go to the Node website and they have pretty good walkthroughs. So get Node set up, and then once you have Node, you will be able to run the npx command. Npx is a shortcut for running a package from the npm repository, which is the JavaScript package manager. And GLTFJSX is a package on npm. So if you know about Node, you could also install GLTFJSX as a global npm package, or just do this. Use this command like npm GLTF npx, and then give it the name of the file that you exported, which should be kick.glb, and sorry, not npm, npx GL. Yeah, I got all kinds of mistakes here. GLTFJSX, and then the name of the file. So then run that. It's a command line tool, so it's going to just do some processing on the GLB file, and then it's going to export a new file called kick.js, which is a JavaScript file. So once you have that kick.glb and kick.js file ready to go, we're ready to move over to React 3 Fiber and put those files to good use by creating a new React 3 Fiber project. And we'll set up a scene just like in this finished version here. So in order to start a new React 3 Fiber project, you can use the React 3 Fiber starter kit in Code Sandbox. I'll put a link to that in the notes. So just clone a copy of the starter, and that will give you a preset React 3 Fiber scene with a spinning cube. We can remove this whole section from line 6 to line 20 and remove the scene there. We're not going to need any of that. And then remove these extra imports that we don't need anymore. Cool. So now we have a totally empty React 3 Fiber scene, and we're ready to bring in our model from Blender. So first, let's bring in the GLB file, and we'll import that into the public directory. And the reason we want to put it in the public directory is because this is kind of like a static file that's going to be loaded. It's not a code file. So we'll go ahead and give this a second to upload. And then as soon as that's done, in the source directory, bring in the kick.js file. This file is the file that we auto-generated from GLTFJSX, remember? And this is an actual React component. And what this file is doing for us is it's just wrapping up the GLB file. So you'll notice that it's importing it, and it's destructuring some of the elements that are contained within a GLB file, mainly all of the nodes and materials and animations. And then it's creating a skinned mesh for us. And the skinned mesh is the type in Three.js that you use to create animated geometry like our character. You'll notice that it has a material prop, a geometry prop, and a skeleton prop. And all of those things are nodes that are coming from the GLB loader. Sweet. So now that we have this component ready, back in our app.js, we can import that. Just like this, we can go import kick from kick.js, and then add it to the scene. Oh, and it appeared you can't see anything yet. So let's maybe add a little more light. We can add an ambient light. Intensity equals 0.2. And then let's also add some orbit controls, which we can get from the Dre package. And that is this guy here. So that is from at react3/Dre, and then /orbit controls, and then add that to the canvas. Now our mouse should be able to move all around. Okay, awesome. The orbit controls can also pan if you right click and drag, which is cool to know. Wow, so our character looks pretty good, pretty cool, to be honest. But it's not animated yet. So that's the last step. Let's hook up the animation. Back in the kick.js, you'll notice that we have this actions variable coming from use animations, but we're not using it for anything. The actions variable is going to contain all of the actions that were in our dope sheet before. If you remember in the action editor, we set up the kick action that plays the kick animation. So in order to trigger that in React 3 Fiber, it's actually really easy. All we need to do is add a use effect, and then use effect takes a function as its parameter, and then we can go actions dot, and then the name of the action is going to come from its name in Blender. So if you remember, we called it, I think it's, yeah, Armada. Or no, sorry, I'm looking at a different Blender project. So we actually called it click or kick, I think. And you know what? This is a good opportunity to prove a point. So if you don't remember what it was called, you could just console log the value of actions right here. And then go look in your console. You should see it. Okay, here it is. So yeah, this one's called kick. So that means we can, back in our use effect hook, go actions.kick, and then actions have all kinds of interesting methods that let you control them. For our use case, we're just going to use play. So let's call play, save that. And it's starting. Let's get rid of that console log because it's kind of hogging some performance. And then, oh, okay. So here is another issue that we have to take care of. So because this kick.js file is using the use GLTF hook to load the static file, that's actually, it's going to be a suspense loading operation, which means you need to wrap it in a suspense component. And to do that, just import suspense from React and then wrap the kick component in a suspense, and then give the suspense component a fallback prop. You can just put null in there for the moment. You can actually put another Three.js component in there and have a placeholder that's 3D, but null will just render nothing, which is fine. And now our scene is loading again, and we have the animation playing. Yeah, so this is cool to do a character, but imagine the possibilities here. You can design so many different things in Blender. You could design a whole world in here and then import it over to Three.js. So once you have done this once with a character, I'd recommend going back and trying some more complicated scenes and see how far you can push it. I'm not going to lie, there are some weird things that I ran into when I was doing this that I had to debug, and that might come up for you, but as long as you're careful, you should be able to accomplish quite a lot by building in Blender and then following this same process to get yourself a GLB file, which you can import into React 3 Fiber. So have fun, build some cool stuff. And if you do build anything cool, I'd love to see it. So put it in the comments. Bye. Thanks.